Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're having a good afternoon. Mike Greenberg, Dominique Foxworth, Jeff Saturday, the latter two former NFL players, on the possibility of the Browns at number 2.
Do you see that possibility? The conversation will become, can they sit at 3 and take the quarterback, or is someone going to jump them? Do the Giants need to go up to number 2? Does someone else need to go up to number 2? Do the Browns take him at number 2? Right. I have said all along, I believe a quarterback will go 1 and a quarterback will go 2 in this draft.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't imagine that they'll allow that to happen because it's basic supply and demand. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of teams that need a quarterback. Right. They are going to be willing to pay, and I think the Browns will be willing to move.
Yeah, but why? I mean, if you're the Browns, your quarterback just tore his Achilles again. Why would you get out? You need one too. Like, you better have everybody pay you a king's ransom and figure some other plan out. The 1 in 15's coming back to you. You got to get one.
Don't point to me.
Don't point at me. Years of success.
It's 115.
I mean, it's just a little different. But I'm saying, if you're the Browns, I ain't just giving
damn hands to yourself.
I can give you a very inexpensive option for Cleveland next year with a quarterback who has had success with Kevin Stefanski. He goes by the name of Kirk Cousins. Can he possibly resurrect it there in Cleveland? He could be like a Russell Wilson kind of deal. All his money still getting paid by Atlanta. Watch that happen. Watch the Browns trade out of number 2.
With that, let's welcome in Jeff Risdon, managing editor for DraftWire. The other guy on that panel there was Andrew Hawkins, who was a former Brown. So that's the reason for the don't point at me with 1 in 15. Let me ask you this, Jeff. You've done a lot of work on the draft. You still are. If they move down from 2, I know it's dependent on how far you move down. What could they realistically expect to get to move from 2 to, say, 6, where the Raiders are?
Yeah, so one of the weird things this year is that every team has their own first-round pick. All 32 picks belong to their own teams. Nobody has multiple first-rounders this year. That's generally what greases the skids. You remember back in the Carson Wentz trade when the Browns got a massive haul. That was because other teams had a lot of extra picks to give up. It doesn't really exist this year. So let's say you want to go down to 6. You're going to ask for number 6, a first-rounder next year, and a third-rounder this year. And is that going to be enough to convince the Browns to move? It probably should be. But if they're in love with a quarterback, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, they probably wouldn't want to do that. Because, look, you've got to fix – you cannot go into next year with quarterback uncertainty in Cleveland. You just can't. And they're in a state right now where there is nothing certain except uncertainty. So it's certainly appealing, the idea that Greenberg lays out, that you can find a guy who buys you time. I'm not sold that Kirk Cousins is that guy. He looked dreadful in Atlanta this year. Now, maybe because he was coming off of an Achilles injury. I don't know. Hopefully he recovers from that. But I will tell you, as an older man now, when you turn 37, things don't heal as quick or as fully as they did when you're 30. And Cousins is going to be 37. A lot of miles on those legs. So it's not a great option, but it's also not the worst option, is probably the best way to say it.
So we'll look at those options, a couple of them at least, in free agency in a minute. Let me ask you this. How do you determine, at what point do you determine we take a quarterback at number 2? In other words, it's clear there are going to be other guys who are ranked higher on the board. Hunter probably, Carter maybe. How far down do you go? What's the delineating point between, man, we got to take them at 2 even though we've got other guys that are ranked higher?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And one of the things that NFL teams do is that they put guys into different tiers, and they won't want to fall out of a tier where they can't get a player that they want. Let's say, just as a hypothetical, they want Travis Hunter. Who wouldn't want Travis Hunter on their football team? He's incredible. He's going to be the number 1 player on most boards, regardless of position. So can you get him still at 6? Well, maybe. Probably can't get him at 8. Probably certainly can't get him at 10. So if that's who you want, that's as far as you're willing to fall. If Mason Graham, the defensive tackle for Michigan, is your guy, and he's another really good one, that then you don't want to fall below where you can realistically see him going. And this is an interesting draft because it's not very there's no surefire number one player. There's no surefire number one quarterback. There will be a lot of teams that won't have first round grades on any quarterbacks in this draft. But as they said on the panel, and as Dominique Foxworth sort of rolled his eyes, you kind of have to have the quarterback. The supply and demand dictates that they're going to go high. So you got to be comfortable with what you get, and you have to be willing to roll the dice a little bit if you're going to trade out. That, oh man, am I going to fall from getting Travis Hunter at number 6 as my top cornerback, or do I have to fall to that next tier where a guy like Will Johnson, who's got some baggage from Michigan coming in, he's probably the next cornerback in line. You have to figure out where that line is. Offensive line is, are you going to miss the top tackle out of that? Because I do think the Browns need some serious offensive line help, especially if they bring in Kirk Cousins, who can't move at all. Those are the things you got to weigh in.
All right, so this is best, worst landing spots for potential quarterbacks changing teams this year. This from the Bleacher Report. So Kirk Cousins, we've talked about him. Best landing spot, they have the Browns. Stefanski coached Cousins for 2 years with the Vikings, was the offensive coordinator when Cousins made the Pro Bowl in 2019. Cleveland made target quarterback with second overall pick. Cousins would be an ideal bridge option if he doesn't cost too much financially. Justin Fields, worst landing spot, they say the Browns. Stefanski changed the core philosophies of his offense 2024 to attempt to get more out of Watson in previous years. His system focused heavily wide zone runs, under center formations, play action passing, was best suited for a pocket passer with precision, accuracy, quick release, great sense of timing. Those aren't Fields' strengths. And then they say Joe Flacco, best landing spots. Browns proved he could shine in Stefanski's offense, and he could learn its intricacies quickly. Even if they draft a quarterback, they'd be wise to have a veteran in the room. If Jameis Winston departs, Flacco would be a logical replacement. We've talked a little bit about Cousins and I haven't seen a lot of video from Cousins at Atlanta. He didn't look completely healthy, and
No.
I don't know. To your point, is he going to be completely healthy? I mean, a torn Achilles, which Deshaun Watson now has had torn twice, significant injury for anybody, especially a quarterback. Fields, I get the thought there. Flacco, how long can he keep going is my question with Flacco. He was great. How long can he keep going?
Yeah, and I think that Flacco has the mindset of being a guy who could work with a draft pick, whether it's at number 2 or if you wait a little while and trade back into the bottom of the first round or use a pick near the top of the second round. He's certainly got that in him. Cousins has that as well. Just based on the way that they played last year, it sure feels like Flacco has more in the tank than Cousins. Now, to the point where is Cousins best fit Cleveland? Heck yeah, it is. Certainly the best landing spot for him. Look, he meshed great with Stefanski. He fits the offense very well. I just worry that he can't play anymore, and I worry that too much will be put on him because he's still going to be making a lot of money from Atlanta, but you're still going to have, Cleveland's going to have to pay him, and that's setting up a really tricky situation for a guy who that's not his strong suit. I think Flacco is better suited for it, and I wouldn't mind him coming back to Cleveland at all. Look, he was comeback player of the year. I voted for him when he got that comeback player of the year. It would be nice to see, but again, how much does he have left? He's 40. It didn't look as good in Indianapolis as he did in Cleveland, but if I think Flacco would be ideal if you're drafting a guy that you want to be starting by the end of 2025, where he can come in and 6 to 8 games. He's going to do better than DTR or Bailey Zappi could possibly do. And I think that's probably your best case scenario if you're drafting a quarterback that might not be ready right away, but you need him ready soon. I personally would go with Flacco there.
All right, so this one's kind of interesting as well. This is from Andrew Filipponi. He is a morning talk show host in Pittsburgh. Sources, there are Steelers scouts who love Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, believe he's first-round talent, potential franchise quarterback. Mike Tomlin, we'll see him next week at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. And again, Milroe is a guy, Jeff, that Brown's new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, knows better than anybody because he coached him as his offensive coordinator at Alabama. It's an interesting,
right.
It's really interesting. Again, if the Browns draft at 2, they have a ton of draft capital to move back up into the first round because they would be second in the second round. So you could take one at 2, you could trade back in. If you can get a couple of first-round picks and trade into the middle of the first round, you might do that. You've looked at Milroe, and again, I'm not saying that Tommy Rees is going to say, we got to get that guy. What I'm saying is Tommy Rees is going to know more than any of the scouts about this guy because he coached him for an entire year where Milroe had success. He'll know his strengths. He'll know his weaknesses. He'll know how quickly he picks up concepts. He'll know what he tried to coach him up in and what areas need improvement in. Those are all things they're not going to have to guess about with Milroe. When you look at Jalen Milroe, what do you see?
I see a guy that does have potential. I really wish he could complete a pass with accuracy under 10 yards. His short game, it's like a beginning golfer going out to the to the green, and you drive within 15 feet or 15 yards of the hole. And then it takes you 6 to get in. Like, that's sort of the way that his short game is. He's very smart, very quick. He does a lot of the things well that Deshaun Watson did well, that made Deshaun Watson appeal to the Browns. If you're still going to try to shoehorn that style of offense, he can do that. He does have some accuracy issues. He has some ball security issues, but he did improve under Rees at all those things. So if Tommy signs off on it, I think that's not a bad idea for the Browns. I personally don't see him being that guy, but again, he's certainly the third best quarterback in this draft. There will probably be people that will tell you that he's the second best quarterback in this draft, and I wouldn't really fight them, just because the guys at the top have enough questions about them as well. Look, like you said, Tommy Rees knows him better than anybody else that is going to be drafting a quarterback this year. And I think one of the telling things will be, I will be down at the Senior Bowl next week, and I will try to pay a little bit of attention to see how much the Browns are watching him down there because, AB has his spot. Doesn't mind people, sitting fairly near him. I'll try to do a little spying there.
There we go. And they also will have a guy that's coaching in that game. So they have some assistants that will be on the field as well. So the Browns will have some coaches there. All right, assuming, and it's a big assumption, if the Browns don't go with one of the top 2 quarterbacks, who are some guys that you like that you think have high upside that wouldn't be, the top 2 guys, but could developmental guys? Maybe that's the way to put it.
Yeah, not Quinn Ewers. I'll just say that right away. No thanks. I like Jackson Dart from Ole Miss to some extent. If you're a Bo Nix fan of what he did in his last year at Oregon, and then that's putting way too much on Dart to do what he did with the Broncos this past year where Nix just took off. But he's followed a similar career arc, and he does have a great downfield arm. He throws anticipatory passes well. He does wet the bed a lot, and that's going to be a big knock on him. It's not going to go away. But he's also a guy that can run around a little bit and protect himself. So there's one to like. As an Ohio Bobcat, I have to obligatorily mention Curtis Rourke, who's now at Indiana. Unfortunately, he's going to be 26 years old and has torn his knee 3 times, and will probably also be the number 1 pick in the Canadian Football League. So as much as I would love to see that as a Bobcat, it's probably not in the works for Cleveland.
Jeff Risdon, managing editor of DraftWire.com, and I can step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
We continue talking Browns and draft with Jeff Risdon, managing editor for DraftWire. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Deion Sanders was saying that it's certain teams that he won't let Shador go play for. If I'm the Browns, I'm calling Deion Sanders and saying, you need to work out a trade package in the event that Shador is on the board when we pick at number 2. If you don't want us to draft him, or that I'm going to draft him and I'll see him at training camp. Because this notion that Shador Sanders is not allowed to go to certain places is ridiculous. We're from Ohio, and we're a very prideful city, and we take pride in the Browns. So I don't want anybody here who thinks they're too good to play for us. That's my thought, and go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, I agree. If you don't want to be here, you don't need that. But here's the thing. Eli Manning, Archie Manning did it. And I thought of this one yesterday as I was listening to it. John Elway's dad did it, and it worked out okay. It worked out okay for the Chargers, where Manning didn't want to go. They got Phillip Rivers. It didn't work out for the Colts. They ended up with like Chris Hinton and a bag of rocks for John Elway.
Yeah, and Chris Hinton, by the way, was a great left tackle, and it still was I lived in Indianapolis when they were there. I suffered through those Jack Trudeau years. That wasn't a fun time. I wonder, like, why is Deion doing this? You know, he's the head coach at Colorado. You know, how much leverage does he really have? And one of the thoughts that's come to me is maybe Shador needs to get away from Dad for a little while. Like, his dad coached him for a very long time. Was his coach at Jackson State. Was his coach at Colorado. I'd be very interested to see what Shador thinks, and if Shador is in line with that, or if he's maybe like, you know, Pops, you know, I got this. You know, let me step out on my own here a little bit. And I understand where Deion's coming from. Look, the Browns have unfortunately, a rotten reputation in the football world. It starts at ownership with, you know, the way that the whole fiasco has gone with Deshaun. It wasn't just that. The way that they treated Baker and the way that Baker also treated them in return also did not sit well with a lot of people around the country, or in Cleveland for that matter. And I think that he's trying to protect his son from that. But this is a case where I would love to see Shador say, you know what, Dad, I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that goes to Cleveland and does, you know, what Baker did, win a playoff game in Pittsburgh, be the guy that is the rally, you know, the rally possum. He's going to find a different animal, you know, be that guy, and you'll be loved in Cleveland. And he has the ability to do that. He is a good schematic fit. Much better than Cam Ward is for what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. So I would hope that Shador and other people around Deion would maybe get him to ease off of that a little bit. You know, maybe, look, it's great that you want the best for your kid. I personally do that myself, but sometimes you got to let them spread their wings a little bit. That would be my advice to Deion, not that he would take it.
All right, this is also from ESPN's Get Up. Mel Kiper came out with his mock draft. Here's who he has the Browns taking number 2.
You go to pick number 2. This is where, again, these two quarterbacks getting forced up just a bit. Who's the best player in this draft? It's Travis Hunter from Colorado. Be it wide receiver, corner, Cleveland needs a dynamic presence at that wide receiver spot. Sprinkle him in at corner. They go Travis Hunter, best player in the draft, over the quarterback in Shador Sanders. Shador Sanders would drop down to that 3rd spot.
So, Jeff, I don't hate the idea of taking Travis Hunter, and I agree. They need a playmaker on the offensive side of the ball. Judy's he's good. You need somebody that, you know, Travis Hunter strikes me, and I haven't seen a lot of them at wide receiver. It's like, oh, that guy's got the ball in his hands. That's not good for the defense. That's what the Browns need offensively.
It is. I will say I do think that Travis Hunter is a better cornerback than he is wide receiver, but that's not to take away from what he can do with the ball in his hands. And I think that pairing him with Jerry Jeudy is a very intriguing idea. This is not a great wide receiver class. So if you're going to get a splash move, you know, first off, you're going to get a quarterback that can throw him the ball on quick screens, slants, you know, little jet sweeps, things like that. That would be a good mix with that. But then you're looking at, you know, getting a guy. We talked about Jalen Milroe earlier, and his trouble with the short game, like that doesn't necessarily blend. So That's a tough one. I'll say this: I think Giants fans would be ecstatic to have Shedeur Sanders fall to them. So maybe that was in Mel's ear a little bit. That's I want a guy that has a defined position. And look, I love Travis Hunter. I think he is the best player in this draft. I agree with Mel on that. I think he's best at corner. And like the Browns, that's the strength of the team. It's probably not as strong as it could be, but you got so many other places that you need help. I think that's a tough one for me. I was chewing on that this morning when I read it. And I'm like, I don't know about that one, Mel. I just don't.
All right, here's another one. This is interesting. So, perfect day 2 pick for the Browns. They say Travion Henderson averaged 7.1 yards per carry, 7.4 in the playoffs, 414 total yards in 4 playoff games. Good vision, elusiveness, burst. Jeff, from everything that I've seen, it's a pretty good draft for running backs, rather. Henderson, who are some of the guys you think the Browns can get late day 2, early day 3 that would be running backs that would fit, a Kevin Stefanski type of offense that we assume they're probably going back to?
Yeah, Travion would be fantastic. He's a great running back. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. He's probably not going to be there that long, but that's another guy. Vision, acceleration, doesn't dance in the backfield. Gets through the hole. That's what Cleveland football is all about. And he's certainly one that fits. Look, it's a fantastic year to need running back help. My goodness. I can't think of his name coming out of Texas is a good one. If you want to go a little bit later, Cam Scadaboo, a guy who maximizes every single ounce of his body. He's probably a 4th or a 5th rounder. Don't tell me he wouldn't fit well in Cleveland with his mindset and his ability to catch the ball at the backfield. He's not fast. He's more in the Kareem Hunt line where he's going to get into the open field. He's not going to outrun many people once he gets there, but he's going to get there a lot. And there's a ton of guys like that that you can find, again, all over this draft. Oregon has a guy. Khalil Mullings from Michigan is another one. Big pounder. Doesn't necessarily have a lot of wiggle to him, but he's going to run over the 225-pound linebacker in the middle of the hole. Watched him do it several times this year. The Browns need to come out of this draft with a good running back. That will not be a hard mission for AB in this one.
Jeff Risdon, managing editor from DraftWire, and I going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll continue talking Browns in the draft. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns and NFL draft with Jeff Risdon, managing editor for DraftWire. Shannon Sharp, Chad Ochocinco, their thoughts on what they're hearing the Browns and that second pick in the draft.
Many scouts believe the Browns will take Travis Hunter, number 2 overall, and focus on a quarterback later in the draft. A multitude of NFL scouts are reportedly of the belief that there is no way Shedeur Sanders would play for the Browns, even if the Browns were interested in picking him. There's reportedly thought among scouting circles that if Hunter were to go to Cleveland, he would have a Jim Brown-type impact on the franchise. Browns hold 33rd and 67th overall pick, which would possibly give them a potential to select Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Monroe, or Kyle McCord. This is going to be a franchise-changing draft for the Browns.
Hey,
what you thinking, Ocho?
I like it. I like it. Their identity anyway is their defense, honestly, until you get a quarterback at the helm that can change the franchise right around like Jaden Daniels has done, like a C.J. Stroud has done. But can you imagine Denzel Ward and goddamn Travis Hunter?
I don't care if you got Denzel Ward. I don't care if you got Prime Time. I don't care if you got Mel Blunt. I don't care if you got Reavers. If you cannot score, you cannot win in this league, Ocho.
Yeah.
And Jeff, both I kind of agree with both of them. Hunter and Ward, yeah, that's intriguing. But that offense needs playmakers. We don't know what
they do.
If Nick Chubb comes back, you don't know what version of Nick Chubb you're getting. You might get Nick Chubb that Browns fans have come to love. Jerry Jeudy had a great year. Can he do it again? Does he threaten the defense? And Njoku has to get better. You need probably at least 2, maybe 3 guys that are good with the ball in their hands.
Right. So one of the things that you're looking at then is, do you punt on the quarterback this year, get a bridge guy, and hope for the best out of Joe Flacco or Kirk Cousins or Daniel Jones or somebody of that ilk? And maybe Jameis comes back. And as high variance of a player as he is, when he's good, he can still light it up a little bit. I'll go to they brought up C.J. Stroud with the Texans. The draft before they got C.J. Stroud, they took Will Anderson. They loaded up on offensive linemen for better and for worse. They got playmakers in their secondary, and they were a much better core team. So when CJ got there, it made a guy like Nico Collins just explode into another level. It helped their lineman block better that he was there, and they had that much more time together. Anderson, that entire defense, they got so much better, and that because of that, there wasn't as much pressure on the quarterback to have to win games by himself. Now, Stroud has proven that he can do that for the most part. That's not a bad situation to look at if you're a Browns fan. And you don't love the quarterbacks here, or you don't think that Shedeur Sanders is going to want to come to Cleveland, you can follow that model. Look, it's painful to keep losing. I get that. I'm old enough to remember a lot of bad Brown seasons. What's one more? I almost say, are you gonna look? Are you gonna be better than Baltimore next year? Are you gonna be better than Cincinnati next year? Even if you get a great quarterback, maybe. Like, you got to understand where your place is and where your window is too. It would be great to get that quarterback out of the way and have that locked in. But at the same time, if you got a bad team around him, you're gonna be like the Chicago Bears were this year, where they got Caleb Williams in there, and their offensive line was wretched, their run game was terrible. They were not ready to have a number one quarterback be the guy to lead them, whether he was ready or not. I would caution Browns fans to keep that in mind with any quarterback that comes in. Like, they're not going to turn this team around overnight. Jaden Daniels did that in Washington, but you have to look, they replaced 7 starters on that defense, and every single one of them was better than the guy that was there last year. That's a big part of that turnaround. He had a good offensive line. He had Terry McLaurin. That's a pretty good football team that was dying for a quarterback. I don't think the Browns are quite there yet, although that defense, to Ocho's point, it could be a really nasty defense. And if you get a quarterback that can lead you to 20 points a game, that gets you to 8 wins probably.
Yeah,
that's progress. That's where you want to be going. You want to be going up the hill. You don't want to be in last place next year. I think that's a very realistic goal for this Browns team, no matter what they do in the draft, is to not finish in last in the AFC North. Maybe even climb up to second. It's feasible. Not going to be easy though.
No, you got to.
Barry's going to have to hit it out of the park, and you got to get the coaching blend right. That's what happens when you make the decisions that they've made that have not worked out. You got to pay the price for that a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, the thing that. The defense still has some really good pieces. The question is, with competent quarterback play, do they rebound to the point where they were, a top third? And they might. They very well might.
Good. Yeah, they did make the playoffs the year before with Joe Flacco being who he was. I understand that allure. I wouldn't expect it, but hey, crazier things have happened. Washington was dead to rights. You watched, Houston rise from the dead My goodness, it happens every year. There's a surprise team or two that rises up. Minnesota their over/under win total this year was 6.5. They won 14 um, with a quarterback that nobody expected. Sam Darnold, maybe he comes to Cleveland. Once upon a time, we talked about Sam Darnold versus Baker Mayfield versus Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson versus Josh Rosen. Those were fun days. Don't miss that.
All right, before I let you go, Tony Grossi, Tony Rizzo, ESPN Cleveland, the Browns and the quarterback in this draft.
It doesn't have to be Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders.
It doesn't,
Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart.
Jalen Milroe, you told me sucks. You didn't want him at all. And Jackson Dart played for Mississippi, for God's sakes. There's a reason he's not playing for Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State. You guys like him? He looks good on tape against who? Mississippi State? Guys,
well,
you're overthinking. You want to believe that you can find the diamond in the rough. The least path to resistance of bleeping up is to take one of these two kids. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I like Tony, and I consider Tony a friend. But Mississippi and Alabama play in the SEC. Colorado plays in the Big 12. They don't play any defense in the Big 12. And you look at Florida State, the ACC isn't exactly a juggernaut defensively either. So if you want to,
no, they're not.
If you want to nitpick, those two guys played against better competition, being Dart and Alabama.
Oh, absolutely. And Dart, I would encourage him to watch their games against LSU or Georgia. Pretty good football teams. He looked pretty darn good. He wasn't perfect, but that guy can play in Cleveland. Again, the biggest knock on Dart that I have is that he comes from a gimmicky offense. Lane Kiffin manufactures a lot of very easy one-read looks. Can he make progressions from 1 to 2 to 3? Can he handle pressure coming up the gut, which is not something that he did particularly well at Ole Miss? Like, there are valid questions about him. He played really darn well in the SEC. He had Mississippi on the cusp of making it into the playoff. I think that's a pretty good accomplishment. If you can get a team like that to where they were, obviously Dylan Gabriel is a guy at Oregon that took a loaded team. He's not an NFL prospect. He does not have an NFL caliber arm. He's also tiny. But you get a guy that's that accomplished, I think that should mean something.
Jeff Risdon, DraftWire managing editor, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Good to be back with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Jeff Risdon, make sure you check him out. Really good draft analysis, draftwire.com. He is the managing editor. We're going to step aside. We continue talking Browns. Damon Wolfe, Dawgs by Nature. Straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. I can see that on the college level, Ohio has figured out how to do it. I just wish the Browns would figure out how to do it. It's been 60 years. What do you think, guys? Can we figure it out?
Man, I don't know. Let's hope so. It is. This draft is going to be hugely important. Let's welcome in Damon Wolfe, Dawgs by Nature. Damon, if Andrew Berry does not have a good draft, this will probably be his final year here. I think this draft in particular, is that important to this franchise.
Yeah, it's critical, especially with all the draft capital that they have in this one. With the number 2 overall pick, they're also picking at the top of every round. So plenty of opportunities for Andrew Berry in the front office to correct things and get the team headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'm one of the guys that there were a lot that weren't. I'm one of the guys that thought they should bring back Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. So this is, it's tick-tock. It is now go do what I think you can do and let's see. But again, they took a step back this year, and they'll need to hit on several of these in a major way to get back to where I think that they're serious playoff contenders.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski are smart guys. I think that they have realized where things really went wrong last year and trying to, cater to Deshaun Watson. And I think that, for good or for worse, Kevin is going to now be in full control of, what's going on, what kind of offense they're running. And I think that, the draft, like I said, it's a huge opportunity for them to, get things back on the right direction.
All right, so a couple of ways I want to go with this. So the caller mentioned Ohio State. I know you wrote an article, which Ohio State Buckeyes should the Browns look at in the upcoming draft? And we've got a list of them here. Howard, Henderson, Judkins, Quinshon Judkins has not officially declared yet, so he could come back for another year. Ibuka, Simmons, Jackson, Sawyer, Tuamalo, Williams, Denzel Burke. Good Lord, they had a lot of guys that are going to get picked fairly early in this draft. Who are the ones that you think fit best with what the Browns need? And we'll get into what, we've got your article on roster holes coming up after this.
Yeah, so, as far as Ohio State goes, good Lord, the talent is off the charts. Dane Brugler recently predicted that there's possibly 16 Buckeyes that could be drafted this year based on his prediction. And, they do have until Friday, I believe, at midnight to declare for the draft. So we'll see what Judkins and some of those guys do. But as far as Fitz from Ohio State and, transferring over to the Browns, I think that for me, a guy that I really look at is at offensive tackle. I don't know how long he will be around in the draft, but Josh Simmons was playing really, really well before, having the injury against Oregon. And he's somebody that I'm definitely looking at. At wide receiver, of course, Emeka Ibuka would be, a good fit for what the Browns are trying to accomplish. And then in the backfield, the Browns are certainly going to need a running back. So Travion Henderson really fits that mold. If Nick Chubb comes back, I would really like a pairing with him and Judkins if that was possible, maybe a little bit later in the draft. There are a little bit of question about his, long speed, but I think all of those guys really fit pretty well. And of course, Howard did himself, really improved his draft stock over the last 4 games through the college playoffs.
Yeah, I was a guy that was like, he might be a late day 3 pick, and he just kept going out and playing well against good competition, without question. All right, you also wrote an article, top 5 roster holes the Browns need to fill in free agency and the NFL draft. Everybody knows the first one. It's, starting quarterback. Number 2, rookie swing tackle who can start soon. We're assuming that DeJuan Jones would be ready to go and that Conklin's coming back, but they definitely need a young tackle. Number 3, talked about this one a little bit, dynamic starting running back. This one we haven't talked about, blocking and possession receiving tight end to pair with David Njoku. And 5, a physical starting slot receiver. And the dilemma is you look at quarterback and you look at tackle, And those are two of what you would consider core building blocks, along with edge rusher and cornerback, when you think about what every team kind of values in the draft.
Yeah, definitely two premium positions on offense. And I think, the five biggest holes on the entire roster, in my opinion, are on the offensive side of the ball. I think it's so critical for them to be able to get that right this season and to be able to score more points. And I think all of those positions are key roles for the team to figure out during the offseason. They can certainly do that. We've talked about the draft a little bit, but there's also going to be some available free agents that they can possibly fill in some of those roles as well.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. I think if you upgrade the offense, the quarterback play was so bad that it put the defense in constant binds. Now, the defense didn't play as well. They didn't take the ball away. But is it because they were on the field so much? Because the offense kept turning the offense had 34 turnovers. So if you think about that, that means you're giving the opponent 34 extra possessions. That's 2 a game. They play 17 games where you're throwing your defense back on the field.
Yeah, it's definitely something that it puts an obstacle in the way for sure to get W's. And the defense, they played well at times. They especially played well early in games and then kind of fell apart. And I think when you're over there on the sideline doing your job and the offense turns the ball over and you got to go right back out and try to do the same thing again, it just makes it very difficult to do. And as players just like us are all human beings, and some negative self-talk comes in and happens, and not being able to count on your offense to go out there and score points to keep up with the opposing offense, just really puts you in a hole.
Dan Wolfe, Dawgs by Nature, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Full Court Action is a half-hour devoted exclusively to men's and women's basketball from across the Mid-American Conference. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Bacon. Join me at 6:30 Tuesday nights, and we'll meet the coaches and players from the Mid-American Conference who are making an impact in basketball. Full Court Action will spotlight the top plays and performances from all across the Mid-American Conference with some historical action as well. Catch Full Court Action Tuesday nights at 6:30 on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. We continue talking Browns with Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, my name is John. I'm a big Browns fan, and I think we could do very well in this draft. And in each position, it's like 15 good players that we could bring on, but I said get it down to the top 5, and you should be that good. Like Abdul Carter for the edge, James Pierce Jr., Tennessee, Jalen Walker, Nick Swartzen, and Mikael Williams. That's just the edge alone. And there's like about 10 other people that we can put into that. But the Browns need to tighten up all the areas with at least some good 3 to 5 people that can be good in them areas, and we can make this playoff run again. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails, Damon. We've talked about it. I tend to agree with you. I think the offense needs an upgrade. Having said that, if you go out and you draft an Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter, I'm okay with that because you're either going to make your defensive secondary or your edge rushers elite. And I think when you can dominate a facet, secondary or line, that's what the NFL is all about.
Yeah, I agree with that, Dave. And, I wrote an article about a week or so ago saying that, to me, if the Browns stick at number 2, the only 2 options at this point for me are either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, one of those 2 guys. I don't think that you can really force a quarterback. Now, if the Browns, fall in love with Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, then by all means go out and do it. But I'm not there with those 2 guys at this point. But as far as the 2 defenders at the top, Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, to me, that's you can't miss on those picks. Those guys are just dynamic players, and I think they're going to have a big impact at the next level. and be really those blue chip players that you're really looking for to add at the top of the draft.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I would explain it, and I've been saying this. Myles Garrett was 1, Denzel Ward was 4. You got to get that kind of player if you're picking at 2. They have to be a guy that people are looking at as a top 100 player in the NFL in a year or two.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think both of those guys would be in that category. Travis Hunter definitely is one of probably the best cornerback prospect that we've seen over the past couple of years coming out of the draft. And he just also happens to be able to probably be, one of the best wide receivers in this draft as well. So he can really help you at 2 premium positions, which I think, I would really love to be a fly on the wall in the analytics department and see, what the Browns really think of that, and to see if they would be able to, think if they can leverage having him play both sides of the ball at the next level. And then, Abdul Carter, being able to pair him with Myles Garrett. I mean, you can't double team them both. So, I think Abdul Carter down the road will be a huge, huge star in the league and a very effective pass rusher.
All right. You also wrote an article, 3 most attractive trade candidates on the Browns roster, and you went with Alex Wright, young defensive end, was injured and missed about half of this year. Wyatt Teller, the guard, and cornerback Martin Emerson had a little bit of a disappointing season. I actually thought he was getting ready to take a big jump, and just didn't happen for him this year. Do you think any of those guys are likely to get traded?
I wouldn't necessarily say likely, and these are certainly the guys that most of the fan base would not like to see go, myself included. But as far as the other 31 teams in the league, when they look at our roster, I mean, I think that those 3 guys are ones that will be very appealing, that they would be, making offers on to the Browns. And a lot of it, will also depend on what they do with that number 2 pick. I also think that if they go Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, they may need to make some room in those position rooms. And so, Emerson could be a guy. I know a lot of people would probably rather trade Greg Newsome with his hefty contract, and, he's kind of played out of position at the nickel over the past couple seasons. But it could be a situation where, Greg plays a little bit more outside. But, if they did move on from Emerson, he might be able to return to his more of his natural spot.
All right, before I let you go, you also tweeted this out, potential 2025 quarterback room. So you've got a trade in there, an early day 3 pick for Malik Willis, who is now back up with the Packers. Jacoby Brissett is a free agent. Jalen Milroe, either trading back late into the first round or taking him with pick 33. Take us through thought on those.
So yeah, my thought process on that is, I know everybody, has talked about, the veteran options. I think Sam Darnold we're going to be priced out of that. I think Kirk Cousins, the age and the injury history, really isn't something that I'm looking to sign up for. So as far as Malik Willis goes, this to me is a young player with upside. I think when I take a look at what Stefanski and Tommy Rees, what they're trying to marry up together, I think he can fit that very well. He can play under center. He can also give you some really good looks out of the RPO game. And, he gives you that threat with his legs. He also has a very, very good arm. And I know it was a small sample size this year in Green Bay, but Willis played outstanding. He completed over 74% of his passes, had no interceptions, 3 touchdowns, won some games, and really played great in relief of Jordan Love while he was hurt this year. So I think that's a guy you might want to take a swing on, and that will give your position room some ceiling for the 2025 season. And then if you bring in Jacoby Brissett as the veteran, we all know what to expect with Jacoby. He's going to take care of the football. The offense, from an EPA perspective, under Jacoby Brissett was Kevin Stefanski. Was in the top half of the league that year in 2022 before Deshaun Watson returned from suspension. So, I think that you kind of bring those two in and let those guys kind of battle it out. And hopefully Malik Willis could win that battle and you'd have a very solid backup with Jacoby Brissett. And then as far as your future, you can take a gamble on a guy like Jalen Milroe. I would even put a guy like Riley Leonard in this category, maybe a little bit later in the draft. And you just kind of let them sit back for the next year or two and hope you strike lightning in a bottle with them.
Damon Wolfe, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Damon.
No problem. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Dave.
Damon Wolfe, make sure you check him out. Dawgs by Nature, always really good Brown stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavs. Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. This from Joe Varden with The Athletic. NBA trade deadline is closing in on February 6th. Executives from 3 franchises have told The Athletic that the Cavs have expressed an interest in acquiring 6'8" forward Cam Johnson from the Brooklyn Nets, one of the most coveted players league-wide in the trade market. We're going to welcome in Ethan Sands, cleveland.com, a beat reporter for the Cavs. So I know you've addressed this on the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. Do the Cavs have the trade assets and the means to go out and acquire a Cam Johnson?
I definitely think it's interesting because you have to not only talk about whether or not they have the assets or the means, but also if they are going to be able to outbid other teams who are also, as Joe Varden of The Athletic mentioned, as there are multiple teams after this very coveted piece, probably the most highly sought after piece in the trade market today and for this year. So I definitely think when you talk about what the Cavs have, it would have to be a combination of some sort of Jalen Tyson, Karis LeVert, or Isaac Okoro, and the 2031 first round pick that they have. And that's like 6 years from now. So it depends on what the Brooklyn Nets value in if they're going to use Karis LeVert's expiring contract as another trade piece themselves. Are the Cavs going to go into a 3-4 team deal that allows them to send a different player to a different destination rather than giving them up to the Brooklyn Nets themselves, who we know are trying to enter a rebuild or are already in a rebuild. So it's a very difficult conversation. And when you talk, it also talks about the camaraderie and the chemistry that's been built of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I think it's definitely a conversation that is going to be continued to have, but it's one that is something to keep an eye on going forward, because when the Cavs are talking about this, they understand that they could be losing a piece that they feel to be vital to this organization.
All right, Darius Garland, has played really well. And take a look at this. He's been extremely efficient attacking opponents off the drives. Of the 11 players with at least 500 total drives, Garland has the second highest field goal percentage, has made almost 60% of his field goals. Only player more efficient in that regard is SGA of the Thunder, who is widely believed to be the front runner for the MVP. Garland's been that good.
He's been that good all year. I think we keep having this conversation about all-star. We keep having this conversation about where he's going to fit into this league. I mean, when you look at field goal percentage, three-point percentage, free throw percentage, he has his career high in all of those percentages this season to start the year. And it looks like he's just on the up and up. And you talked about the driving aspect of his game. It's because he's put on weight, he's put on muscle that has allowed him to feel comfortable going into the trees and hanging out and not only probing and getting around them, but also attacking and dishing out his own kind of punishment. So Darius Garland is at, I believe, the start of his peak of his career when you talk about where he has come from all the injuries that he's dealt with in the beginning of his career to where he is now. So I think it's another all-star season for Darius Garland, whether or not he's a starter, which would be difficult. But if he's a reserve, it would be in the hands of the coaches. And I think it's something that's definitely worth conversation because of what he's been and what he's meant to the Cleveland Cavaliers this season. He's been pivotal. He's been undeniably one of the best, if not the best player on the Cavs this season.
All right, let's take a look at the NBA Power Rankings. This is from ESPN, and players under pressure for every team. So they go Thunder 1, Cavs 2, Celtics 3, 36-6. Cavs officially on a 70-win pace, which unofficially means their measure for success of the team and Donovan Mitchell now enters a different stratosphere. It's now championship or bust, and Mitchell, the face of the franchise, has to be the guy to lead them there. Leads Cleveland in points and steals, 23.3 points, 1.4 steals. You know what? That might be true, the championship or bust. I think that's what Donovan Mitchell wants. That's one of the reasons he stayed here. He felt they could get that here.
We were talking about this on the podcast yesterday, on the Wine and Gold Talk podcast, about whether we're at that point in the season where it's championship or bust. And it feels that way, not only because of Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley playing well and coming into their own. Donovan Mitchell obviously having 30 or more points in 3 of his last 4 contests. But you also understand that it's the pieces around him that have elevated the entire game. Kenny Atkinson has been able to go deep into the bench to understand which player he can use in different scenarios to help them win. Earlier this week, it was Tristan Thompson and Jalen Tyson, 2 guys that have been in these trade conversations. Jalen Tyson obviously more than Tristan Thompson because of his youth and his availability and his contract, which is friendly for other teams to look at. But that's the difficult part that I was talking about earlier when it comes to the trade talks. This team has built the chemistry and camaraderie that has led them to be 36-6 and on a 670 game win pace. So when you take that apart, you could make a change. It could be one move or 2 moves that could change the entire outlook of this roster. And the other biggest thing when it comes to this is looking around the league and looking at players that the Cavs fans and Cavs organization has gone after in the past and ultimately chosen not to go after. But Dorian Finney-Smith with the Lakers has not been playing well, and he's a guy that they've wanted in the past. So to say that he would have fit in a different way with the Cavs is true, but I think it's interesting to talk about how one move could jeopardize where this team is at, depending on if the player that they acquire actually plays up to the standard that they need him to.
All right, so Cavs are 36-6, and take a look. This is a note that the Cavs tweeted out. They're now only the 14th team in NBA history to start the season off 36-6. That's how good they've been. 21-2 at home. Next 2 are on the road. They got the Rockets tonight. They have another road game against Philadelphia. Then they play Rockets again at home. When you look at it, all great stuff, and they just find different ways to win. It's mark of a good team. It's mark of a really good team.
It's mark of a great team. It's a mark of a great staff. It's a mark of a great organization. And you got to give credit to Kobe Altman and Kenny Atkinson and the upper front office for making the decisions that they have or not making the decisions that they didn't do earlier last year and all those different things. When you talk about the moves that they have made to get to this point. So I think Cavs fans can be rest assured that the right move will be made, not only for the future of the organization, which I think is exceedingly important, but also for this season and where this team is, because it's a very delicate situation in the locker room when you talk about how these pieces have been placed to make it possible for them to happen. And that also leads into the question, does Karis LeVert and Ty Jerome, who are both on expiring contracts, come back next year? And Dan Gilbert has shown that if the Cavs are successful and if they make it to the championship or even to the Eastern Conference Finals, I would not be surprised if he pulls a couple extra bucks out to bring those two key pieces back to the Cleveland Cavaliers next year.
Ethan Sands, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Ethan.
Thanks for having me.
Ethan Sands, make sure you check him out. Always really good Cavs coverage for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Before we go, a Guardians note. Guardians active in the free agent market as they have signed reliever Paul Sewald to a one-year, $7 million contract. The deal includes a mutual option for the team and the player in 2026. Sewald, 34 saves in 2023, split time between the Mariners and the Diamondbacks. Last year he had 16 saves for the Diamondbacks. Pedro Avila was designated for assignment to create space for Sewald on the 40-man roster. But they get a guy who was a closer this year to strengthen what was a really good bullpen as well. Paul Sewald signed to a one-year, $7 million contract by the Guardians. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.